Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. And as you can tell by the sound of my voice, I am still a bit adversely affected by the Mania of Wrestlemania weekend. New Orleans was fantastic. Easily my favorite Mania weekend experience I've had in the last 3 years now. I've been doing this whole excursion. So much fun. I loved meeting all the fans who came up to me to say hi. I just enjoyed the sights of Bourbon Street and being there for WrestleMania, being there live and in living color for it, and all the stuff in between. You'll be seeing a lot of videos that I shot over that weekend coming out on the channel in the weeks to come, and I hope you guys enjoy those videos. But for right now, we have one final week before the Superstar shakeup. It's the Raw and Smackdown after Mania. Let's do this. Raw begins with Stephanie McMahon making her way to the ring with a very noticeable limp with her arm in a brace. She's just selling the injuries sustained at the hands of Ronda Rousey on Sunday. She tells the audience that they smell. She introduces Ronda Rousey and basically turns into Darth Vader, where she says, "Join forces with me and we can do amazing things together." The crowd is very loudly chanting bullshit and shut the fuck up. I can't remember the last time I heard those chants on Raw or SmackDown. It's been a long time, let's just say. Rousey shakes her hand, but it's all a ruse. She puts Stephanie in an armbar after taking off the brace and putting it back in there. Stephanie's selling is very haunting, is probably the best way to describe it. It sounded very real and traumatic as the EMTs were working on her, to me at least. It was so just like extreme the way she sold it. She didn't sell like, oh, I'm in a wrestling hold. It sounded more visceral than that. Corey Graves is supposed to be like the heel of the announced trio, but I thought his language toward Rousey for that move there would have been stronger and more anti-Rousey. There's how dare you? It was unprovoked. Shut up, Saxton. I know Saxton wasn't there on Raw, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, I thought, they could have played that up a little bit bigger, even though Ronda is the face here, and what she was doing was getting a receipt on Stephanie for the week before WrestleMania. I still think Corey Graves especially could have been more like, oh my god, this is heinous. Also, the cherry on top for this segment was when Stephanie was being carried out by the EMTs out of the ring and up the ramp. JoJo gets on the mic and says, "Would you please show some respect for Stephanie McMahon," which gets booed. But I just love her delivery with that because it reminds me so much of like the announcing cadence of Dotflist for his wrestling theme remixes.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we please have a little respect for Stephanie McMahon.
And now the John Cena, bringing you the hottest action you have ever seen in your whole life.
The new Raw Women's Champion, Nia Jax, comes out to celebrate her victory from Sunday. A "You deserve it" chant happens. That chant also happened in the previous segment to Stephanie when she was put in the armbar again. This chant will be played out several times over the course of Monday night, both genuinely and ironically. So, if you don't like that chant, then you certainly got played to death here. Alexa Bliss interrupts and says, no, Nia Jax is the bully. And they're supposed to be having a tag team match, but right now Nia hasn't introduced her partner yet. And for a split second before she announced to her partner, I thought she was going to say, it's going to be someone from the WWE Universe and pick out some kid in the crowd like Braun Strowman did. Anyway, she introduces Ember Moon, the former NXT Women's Champion, making her Raw debut here, and she just kills. Like, her hot tag is so one-sided. She just destroys Alexa and Mickey pretty much single-handedly after getting the hot tag. Hits the Eclipse on Bliss to win. A very, very powerful debut on Raw for Ember Moon. Backstage, Braun Strowman and Nicholas, the son of referee John Cone, show up to Kurt Angle's office to relinquish the Raw tag team titles because Nicholas has scheduling conflicts because he's still in the 4th grade. I thought that was pretty funny. And so then he says when Nicholas grows up and gets out of school, so in about a decade or so, they'll be back to try to get those titles. And Nicholas says, and they're going to get these hands. Say what you will about the stunt they pulled at WrestleMania to have Nicholas win the belt with Braun, but you got to admit, that kid is one lucky SOB right now. I definitely, if I was 10 years old and saw that, I would be insanely jealous. No Way Jose makes his Raw debut and beats up a jobber within seconds. I had never seen the conga line on NXT before, so this was a surprise to me. It looks like kind of Rosebuds 2.0. It's Rosebuds for a new era. It looks like a lot of local indie talent across the country will be getting some extras work in the months to come. So as a result of Strowman and Nicholas relinquishing the Raw tag titles, they've set up a tag team eliminator, not a tournament, to determine who will face the Bar at the Greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia to become the new Raw tag team champions. The first match to determine this little mini not tournament is the Good Brothers versus the Revival. A good match, a great comeback sequence by Anderson, but he is the Shatter Machine, and the Revival advance. We'll find out who they're facing later in the night. At two different points in this show, we get the same copy used verbatim by Corey Graves and later Michael Cole, where they say, not only did he have a great performance, he also won the Intercontinental Championship, to introduce the Seth Rollins segment. It's fine when one person says that, but when they do it twice, it just seems especially canned. It's the same thing. To me, it's as jarring as when, Joe Buck, in the middle of an at-bat, will, plug the next show on Fox, the next hot sitcom or something, or next hot drama. And that, to me, is what that's how fake it felt to me and how insincere. Anyway, the new Intercontinental Champion shows up, a "You Deserve It" chant once again. He talks about how awesome Mania was for him, and now all members of the Shield are officially Grand Slam champions. Finn Balor comes out and asks for a title shot, but then out comes The Miz. He interrupts and says that him losing made his daughter and his wife cry. I love that heel rationale, or kind of like the putting up a fight or arguing what happened at WrestleMania. He invokes his rematch clause for Backlash. Very interesting. They're now simultaneously plugging the Greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia at the end of the month, and then Backlash 2 weeks after that. It's going to be a busy few weeks for both brands at this point. The Miz and crew stare down Rollins and Balor, but then Jeff Hardy shows up, evens the odds. We're going to have a 6-man tag team match later in the night. We get a match between Mandy Rose and Sasha Banks. Bayley makes her way out uninvited to Sasha's corner. Mandy and her get into an altercation, and then Bayley goes for a shot, but Mandy ducks, and so Bayley decks Sasha. Instead, Mandy wins the match with a flying knee. Bayley looks like upset, and Sasha looks like just kind of annoyed at her. And the commentators go, "Oh man, these two have got to get things figured out and work together." Like, I thought their friendship already dissolved weeks ago by this point when Sasha beat up Bayley in the locker room. I mean, what will the official breaking point be? I know they have a match next week, but like, haven't we already had that? I feel like, how much more finality do you need to justify this blow off between the two? Then after the match, Paige gets on the microphone and gives her retirement speech, pretty much confirming what a lot of us knew for months, because the neck injury she sustained at a house show way back several months ago has pretty much ended her in-ring career. So it's kind of fitting that the building she debuted in after WrestleMania 30 is also the building she retires in. It is very sad. Like I said, when she was first hurt, it really sucks to see her career snuffed out with her being so young. She started out at a very early age, but I think she had so much more to give if she'd stayed healthy. It's really unfortunate what happened, that her career is pretty much over at this point. But like she said in her speech, the fact that Daniel Bryan came back after 3 years definitely gives her hope for a possible comeback in the future. Will that happen? We will see. Elias sings a song, but he's interrupted by the returning Bobby Lashley. The former multi-time Impact Wrestling champion makes his return to the company that made him a star in the first place about a decade ago. He beats up Elias, has this incredible hanging vertical suplex, just stalling suplex, one-handed for bringing him down. A very strong return. Do we love Bobby? Do we love Bobby? Well, on this night, we certainly do. Backstage, Kurt Angle's approached by Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, who are basically asking for a job on Raw, and Kurt goes, "Didn't you guys get fired for beating up your bosses?" And I love Zayn's rationale for this, where he says, "Oh, it was different then, it was a personal vendetta." His delivery, I thought, was what really solidified that. It made it awesome. Then Kurt says, "I hear TNA is hiring," which me and the entire crowd on TV go, "Whoa!" like crazy, that he would just take this direct jab at TNA or Impact Wrestling. I know it's not called TNA anymore, so the oomph isn't quite there, but it's still like, when's the last time they've ever made a direct jab at their competition like that? Even on the Edge and Christian show, when AJ Styles was first there, and they said, like, "Will WWE ever talk about this?" And they said, "That company AJ Styles worked in for this year to this year," and they couldn't even mention it by name, but here they do. I thought that was very interesting for them to do that. But anyway, Angle puts the two of them in a match with each other later in the night for a single open space on the roster, so we'll hear from them in a little while. The Authors of Pain make their Raw debut, answering the open challenge from Heath Slater and Rhino, quickly destroying them. Then after the match, they turn back their manager, Paul Ellering. They stop him, and then they go up the ramp by themselves. Very interesting. On the one hand, I can get why they might be doing that. I don't know what Ellering, if he wants to be on the road or not, so maybe that's one way to rationalize it. But I think it's also very interesting because since we've known the Authors of Pain, they've always been with Paul Ellering ever since their debut in NXT. So for them to make the separation here on Raw is a bold step, and it's kind of where are they going to go? How will they be able to go on without their trusty manager? They've been able to, I think they're capable of doing it. I think their in-ring work speaks for itself, but without a mouthpiece, a solid mouthpiece like Paul Ellering, jury's still out. I'm looking forward to see what they do. Roman Reigns comes out, and as he's making his way to the ring, Michael Cole says he suffered a dozen German suplexes and a dozen F5s on Sunday. Jesus, if that were true, I would have started throwing beach balls in the crowd. Anyway, Roman complains that Lesnar leveraged the UFC against WWE when re-signing, because that was the big news on Monday that Brock had re-signed. And then he pretty much, he in a very weird way, kind of complained that he was getting a rematch in the Saudi Arabia show. He says, and now I find out I'm in this steel cage match for the title with Lesnar that I had to find out on the internet. I'm like, dude, shouldn't you be happy that you're getting another shot against Lesnar for the title? The way he said that to me came off very kind of bitchy. Anyway, Reigns says he'll be the next Universal Champion, but then Samoa Joe makes his return, his long-awaited return after an injury he suffered in January. He says that he will be waiting for the winner of the cage match in Saudi Arabia at Backlash. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I don't know. I thought Reigns was going to win on Sunday, so I'm thinking he will probably win in Saudi Arabia. But then again, I've been wrong before, so who knows who Joe's going to face at Backlash. In the second half of the tag team eliminator, Titus Worldwide take on Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy, the Woken Lovers. That's what I'm going to call them from here on out on this show. Hardy and Wyatt teleport into the ring to start the match. They both do the wonderful taunt, and they win eventually. They will face the Revival next week. I'm very interested in seeing where they go with Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt, because first they were rivals, now they're allies on the same page. And we see a backstage segment before the main event as well, where you see Matt and Bray and Jeff all doing this conversation together and making some references to all of their past escapades together. So, you know, where will Jeff, where will Brother Nero fit into all this eventually? I don't know. I'd like to see something between him and the other two now, but I do like the idea of Bray kind of like having been shown the light by Matt Hardy, and now he's gonna like kind of work with him. It makes me think eventually they're gonna have a point where Bray kind of like does very similar to what Randy Orton did for last year's WrestleMania, where he's allied with Bray, then he turns on him because he was a plan all along. Makes me think Bray might do the same thing eventually, but hopefully they won't pull the trigger on that too soon. We get Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn, and another really good showing between these two guys. The match does end in a double count out after a twisting superplex off the top rope. Neither man gets a job. TNA chants fill the arena. I look forward to seeing where the journey takes these two and how they will eventually find their way back onto a full-time gig on Raw or SmackDown. The main event's The Miz and The Miztourage taking on Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, and Jeff Hardy. Another solid match. Ultimately, it's kind of inconsequential to any kind of storyline as the baby faces win. Each person takes a turn hitting their finishers on both members of the Miztourage. That's how it goes. Basically, kind of spinning their wheels until the superstars shake up, and then the lead up to the Saudi Arabia show, and then Backlash. There's a lot of uncertainty across both shows as we go to those next two events, but we'll get into that as the weeks go on. Before I move on to SmackDown, this episode of Who Wore It Better is sponsored by SeatGeek. It's an app you can download on your iOS or Android device that gives you tons of ticket deals for concerts, sporting events, WWE shows, you name it. Download the SeatGeek app using the link at the top of this description, then enter the promo code WREGRET in the Accounts tab and get $20 back on your first ticket purchase. Over on SmackDown, Shane McMahon opens the show. He announces Daniel Bryan has resigned as general manager. He's going back to full-time active competition and now introduces his replacement, Paige. Fresh off of her retirement speech on Monday, she shows up here, and as her first act, she announces AJ Styles will take on Daniel Bryan in a non-title match. You know, good to see Paige is staying involved in the product. Now it sounds like Absolution's, I mean, I would imagine with Paige being gone and her being the whole point for the existence of Absolution, that Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, well, I think will split up after the shakeup. That's what I'm guessing at least. But yeah, it's good to see Paige still involved. And like I said, hopefully, you know, if Daniel Bryan is any indication, then anything is possible. With neck injuries, those are kind of scary. We've seen it happen with, you know, guys like Austin and Edge in the past. So we'll see if, you know, Paige can mount a comeback. But for now, I'm open to seeing what she'll do in an authority figure role. I mean, the last female authority figure I could think of, besides Stephanie McMahon, was AJ Lee. And that I thought was kind of weird, but we'll see what Paige can do now that she's officially out of any kind of in-ring capacity. Our first match is the Usos versus the New Day in a #1 contendership match for the tag titles at Saudi Arabia. But don't get the Usos get an automatic rematch because they were the champs at WrestleMania. Anyway, great stuff here by both teams. I loved the Uranagi out of the corner by Big E into the backstabber by Xavier. That was a great move. In the end, the Usos win with a top rope splash onto Xavier. Very good work here. I'm wondering if the shakeup will, I would hope at the very least, it splits up these two teams, because as much as I enjoy seeing them wrestle each other, it's time for them to would both move on, but I also wonder if either of these two teams will themselves be split up by the shakeup. Lots of intrigue going into next week for sure. The winner of the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal, Naomi, takes on Natalya in singles action. She beats Natalya in a solid matchup after a split-legged moonsault. Another good look for Naomi. It's 2 big wins in a row here, but to me, it's just kind of spinning the wheels until after next week. Again, both shows are kind of doing this. Backstage, Renee Young demands an answer from Shinsuke Nakamura as to why he did what he did after the title match at WrestleMania. After giving a disingenuous answer the first time when Renee presses him, he says, "Sorry, no speak English," which I love that comeback. I want to see more sarcastic heel Shinsuke now. SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte celebrates her big win at WrestleMania when she beat Asuka. She's gracious in victory from Sunday, talks about the future. When speaking of the future, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce make their main roster debut. No longer the iconic duo, they're now just the Iconics. Let me know how you feel about that in the comments section. They make fun of Charlotte's speech and then they begin to kind of surround her. Charlotte gets the first shot in, but the Iconics do beat her down and just leave her laying in the ring. They just destroyed her in a 2-on-1 assault. Then out comes Carmella to cash in the briefcase. Carmella wins the SmackDown Women's title. A big moment here for Carmella. Charlotte, of course, is very protected here. Doesn't hurt her for losing here after winning at WrestleMania because she just got beat up by 2 women at once. So she was left laying. She was defenseless. So I don't think it's a huge blow to Charlotte. She'll get it back eventually. But this is big heat for Carmella here to finally cash in after holding the briefcase for so long and so many false starts, so many kind of like, things where you think she might eventually cash in, but she does it here after WrestleMania. And I look forward to seeing where the reign of Carmella, the era of Carmella, where it will take us. A triple threat match for the #1 contendership for the US title as Bobby Roode takes on Rusev and Randy Orton. Again, isn't Orton owed an automatic rematch because he was the champion going into Mania, much like the tag team thing? Very confusing. Anyway, Rusev has Roode in the accolade, but Orton jumps, or Rusev shit cans him, hits Roode with an RKO to win the match, and he'll be facing Jinder Mahal in Saudi Arabia. So it makes you wonder what the point of these matches were, where the #1 contenders, the rightful #1 contenders, the former champions, win these matches to become the #1 contenders. Kind of redundant. Main event time, the fantasy match as they kept hyping it, as AJ Styles takes on Daniel Bryan. Great stuff between AJ and Daniel here. Daniel does not look like he's lost a step since being out of the ring for about 3 years or so. Great grappling and striking between the two. You know, you could tell that like they were kind of like holding back a little bit. I think that once they're given a proper match with a proper finish, they'll be able to go more all out. Because out comes Shinsuke Nakamura. He beats up both men. I think Daniel actually gets the win by disqualification. So as of his return, he's still undefeated technically. So then he lays up both guys, walks away. I don't mind the finish because it makes a lot of sense on a storyline perspective and it protects everyone pretty much. It protects AJ and it protects Daniel here. So that's the show. Fades to black. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And after this week, I'm officially resetting the board. So after this and the Superstar Shakeup, it will be a clean slate for both Raw and SmackDown. So who's going to win this final round? Who's going to break the tie? Ultimately, I'm going to go with SmackDown. I think it was the stronger show. Now, Raw did have, I think, more exciting debuts and returns. In particular, my favorite returns here, debuts for this episode of Raw was Ember Moon's debut and Lashley's return. I think those were the strongest kind of like big roster moments on Raw. And Owens versus Zayn I think was the best match of the night, with the 6-man tag kind of being a bit of a second place there. What I didn't like about Raw was, again, the announcers really underselling the Stephanie Ronda Rousey segment and the post-match assault that Ronda did, or the post-promo assault that Ronda did on Stephanie. And again, I think the lack of Lesnar I thought was kind of a bummer. I know it's Brock Lesnar, he's a part-timer, whatever. But I would think that after a match like that, after re-signing, you would have some kind of thing, at least from Paul Heyman or something like that. With SmackDown, I think, I think they had the better matches and the better storyline progression, even though I think that as far as like debuts and returns go, may not be on the same level as Raw. I liked Paige being introduced as the new GM. The New Day and the Usos was a very good match. The Iconics debuting, and that whole segment with the Iconics debuting, Carmella cashing in, winning the title, I thought was a very strong segment. And the main event of Styles and Bryan was great as well. The one thing I didn't like about SmackDown was the fact that you have the rightful #1 contenders having to fight for and eventually winning the #1 contendership, which makes the whole match kind of pointless. That was my only real gripe with SmackDown this week. Let me know what you guys thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive perks and bonus content. I'm Bryan Zayn, and I'll see you next time.